Ask the Podcast Coach for August 11th, 2018.
Let's get ready to podcast.
I'm dancing in my hotel room. Welcome to Ask the Podcast Coach, where you get your podcast questions answered live. I'm your host, Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting.com. And today I'm in Franklin, Tennessee. But right over there, Omaha, Nebraska, the one, the only, Jim Cullison from theaverageguy.tv. How's it going, Jim?
Greetings, Dave. Happy Saturday morning to you. I don't know if dancing in a hotel room or dancing with yourself is any better, but good to be back on a Saturday morning.
Hey, speaking of dancing in a hotel, we'll start off with a fun-filled tangent. Somebody was dancing, he said in quotation marks, in the room next to me yesterday.
Really?
Well, I was sitting there with my earbuds in, and I'm like, I think I hear a goose honk. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm not in Ohio.
Oh, dancing.
And I took out my...
with air quotes.
That's not geese. No, I wanted to applaud. I wanted to applaud when they were done. I was like, yes, that's some stamina, my friend. Oh,
wow.
Going to the dark place already.
That's an office space joke or something there, but it's yikes.
But if you want to, we are at askthepodcastcoach.com/live, and we have a chat room out there. If you want to join us, you can go to askthepodcastcoach.com/join, and you will jump into the video. I guess I'm sounding okay. I'm looking okay.
I think so.
Yeah, I think the hotel Wi-Fi hotel Wi-Fi.
Well, what we did this morning is we just reversed roles a little bit. So I used my stuff to host the video. I've got pretty good bandwidth here at home. So I'm hosting the video for Dave, and then I sent him the embed code and said, hey, put this on the site. And then I sent him the join link. It's exposed the other way around. But then, Dave, you got a new piece of equipment that actually allowed you to do the music there, which is pretty cool.
Yes, I decided, hey, you know what? That balance on my credit card is way too low. And I went out and bought a Sound Devices. I've even got the sticker to prove it. A Sound Devices Mix Pre 6. So thank you, Daniel J. Lewis, for having a link on your website. And it's a mixer, it's a recorder, all in a box. And when I get home, I'm having a giant garage sale. I'm gonna be like, all right, who wants the old Behringer mixer? Who wants this? Who wants that?
You want to show that real fast? You want to take the camera down? And
yeah, we will. I wish I could. I know there's a way I can adjust the whatever you call it, the brightness on this. I just can't figure it out. But yeah, so up here at the top, I've got a stereo recording of everything, and I'm in channel 1. Jim is in channel 2, and when I do the old
let's get ready,
that's on channel 3. And then over here, when I click, when I talk, it turns green. You can see I'm actually kind of peaking if I get too loud.
Yeah, and then if I talk, I'm on the second channel right there.
Yeah, so it's pretty sweet, and I just see me doing. I don't know. I like going on the road, and what happened this week is I have there's a show Without Warning, done by an actual private investigator who hired me to help her launch her podcast. And I was at Podcast Movement. She said, we're doing a launch party. Yeah, she's from Boston. We're doing a launch party. Come on down. She's doing a launch party on the 11th. It'd be great if you could make it. And I was like, it's an 8-hour drive. I'd really like to, because I'm really, this tugs at my heart, because there's a mom somewhere that lost her daughter and she still wants this solved. And so I was really thinking I was going to go. And then it just so happened Angus Nelson, who helps run the Nashville Podcasters Meetup, which is a great group. I mean, literally like probably 50 people, said, hey, we're having a meeting Wednesday. If you ever want to come down, we'd love to have you. And I said, well, you know what? I'm thinking about it. So I had to work with Libsyn a little bit. I said, hey, I'm going to leave early on whatever day, Tuesday. So I got here late Tuesday night, hung around Wednesday, went to the meetup. And then last Thursday, went out for pizza. We had another little meetup with David Hooper and some folks. And then last night, I just actually wanted a night to kind of chill and play with the new toy, of course. And then so today, after I get out of here, I'm going to check out, basically get ready to go to this party from 2 to 6. And I'm going to drive as much as I can drive, pull over wherever that is, and sleep for the night, and then wake up in the morning and drive home. So that's the plan. But when it was 2 events in Nashville, and I love Nashville, it's a fun place. And I knew this group because they had kind of a makeup on the spur Nashville Podcasters Meetup at David's Podfecta event. and I knew there were a lot of people here, so it was cool. So
I saw you in a video. You were at a pretty serious studio. You did a closet studio.
Oh,
and you talk a little bit. You learn anything in there?
yeah, Danny Osment does Emerald City Productions, and it's funny because he gives me his address. He goes, "Oh, I live in Franklin too." Well, Franklin apparently is pretty big, and I'm driving, and it's funny because I drive past a horse place, so instantly I think of Glenn the Geek, and I drive next to the one thing, and somebody's got a bunch of goats, and now when I think of goats, I think of Elsie Escobar because she's got a little baby goats and stuff like that. And I go to Danny, beautiful house, and what he did is he moved from Washington D.C. to more or less Franklin, but Nashville-ish, to be near the music scene. He's actually a drummer, and he's a recording engineer. I mean, straight up, that's what he did. So he built a studio in his house. Like he was having this house built, beautiful house, but he is in like the country. I mean, he's out in the middle of nowhere, which is cool because, you know, when you're making loud music, you don't want to annoy the neighbors. And he had this one room with the drums in it and all this, you know, treatment on the walls and fake brick to absorb sound. It was really, really cool. And then I went to walk into his room where he mixes, and it was like one of the most dead rooms I've ever been. Like there was no bouncing. And he said, it's interesting. He'll be on like Skype, and he goes, I don't have to wear headphones because nothing bounces off and goes back into the microphone. He goes, it's really cool. So I started to show that room, and Facebook is like, up, lost the connection. He goes, yeah, you're not. He goes, I'm really impressed you had that much of a connection. He goes, it doesn't matter who you are, Sprint, right? He goes, nobody gets a signal out here. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of not cool. So, and he said, even on his Wi-Fi, he goes, he has a hard time sometimes. He goes, because we are in the middle of nowhere. And I'm like,
maybe it's all that sound treatment.
Yeah, so who knows? Could be.
Slows it down.
Don't know, but it was impressive, and he's a really, really good guy. I've known him a little bit because he sponsored the School of Podcasting for a while, and then and he's kind of now he's got this studio, and he says it's kind of weird because it was made for bands to come out and record live, and he goes, to a certain extent, a lot of bands now are recording at home,
right?
You know, he goes, if somebody really wants to come out and record the band live, he goes, you know, it's a great place to come, but a lot of guys, especially if it's, you know, a Jim Croce kind of thing where it's a guy, a guitar, and a vocal, you know, you don't need all this stuff. But he had a cool vocal booth. He had all sorts of fun stuff. I was like, ooh, this is
super cool. Did you see anything in there, like any takeaways of like, oh, I'd love to do this?
He had, I wish I could remember the name of it, but he had this like sound designer come in. He's got his 2 studio monitors that were like not your typical sitting on your, you know, these were not Logitech speakers, you know. And he said the sweet spot is about, you know, 2 feet above the keyboard. And I'm sitting there and I'm like this, and all of a sudden I got to that spot, and it was just like, whoo, and it sounded like the guy was right. It was just amazing, the sound of it. And he said the company that he's using for this, they actually come out like once a quarter and fine tune it. Like apparently, wow. I don't know, weather or whatever can have some sort of, but it was amazing. And then he brought out like a demo disc of stuff, and it was just. He had 2 subwoofers, but that's where he mixes his stuff. And I was like, yeah, this is
pretty nice.
This is real. These are the real tools. This is the stuff. So it was very, very cool. So, but nothing really learned. The biggest thing I learned in Nashville was at the meetup. And there was a guy that does, there's an event going on in Nashville called story2018.com. And so their speakers were all about telling stories. And, you know, we're so used to, you know, ask the podcast coach for August 11th, blah, 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 hit the music, and here we go. And they were more about, they called it the hero quote, and again, a lot of their stuff was interviews and people telling stories. So you grab a piece of it, you put that there. And a lot of times, you know, there'll be the quote where it's, you know, it's a quote from, I don't know, Glenn Hebert. And Glenn says, above all else, don't be boring. And then I go, hey, School of Podcasting today, hit it, ladies. And instead they're saying, like, why not go, what is boring? You know, boy, and then you just start and you just continue the story, and then maybe you fade in. And their music was not, see, I'm more high energy, fun, educational. And that was the one thing I was really glad they said is towards the end, they said, realize this is one way to do an intro. This may not work for everybody else. And I'm like, hallelujah, because I could see everybody going, oh, I've got to go home and I've got to redo my intro. So it was, that was really cool. In fact, I actually emailed him. The guy's name is Chad Michael at chadmichael.com. And the other thing that I asked, which was cool, is they have this phenomenal. I mean, the guy's got Pro Tools open and he's showing, what a session looks like. And there's just, I mean, it's major storytelling, NPR kind of style stuff. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. But they also had a team of 6.
Mm-hmm.
And they actually had one guy that edits, and then the other guy takes his edits and then is like a soundscaper or something like that. And he's the guy that moves in the music. And then what they did, and this is one thing that I was like, that's a different, that's something I didn't think of. They have everything transcribed, and they even mentioned Temi, but they use Rev and Temi. And they said what they use a transcript for is editing. They go through and read it and go, yeah, that's got to go. That's got to go.
Yeah,
and it's like, that could be a time saver.
Well, we've talked about that software, right? That does that, right? And you edit the transcript and it edits the audio. And I hadn't thought about using the transcripts as a visual kind of representation of it to make sure it makes sense. That's a good idea. It's a really good idea.
Yeah. So it was, that's when I went, marking it down, So, and the other thing was that, see, I'm starting to do the school of podcasting now.
You got to be careful. Don't do that. You'll get angry listeners.
Angry listeners going, you did a rerun.
Don't do it again.
But so all in all, I'm glad it came down. I am kind of, the fact that it was kind of almost back to back with Podcast Movement. I'm a little homesick. I'm kind of like, I'm tired of not really knowing where anything is, and so that whole thing.
You get out of your routines, right? And you just kind of long for some of those same local routines that you have. And I
want to know where the grocery store is. I was happy to go to a Kroger. Kroger used to be in Ohio, and they're not. I was like, oh, I get to go into a Kroger. So, and the fact that the guy asked me if I had a Kroger card, and I said no, and he said, you want me to get you one? And I was like, get you? All right. I'm in the South. And I'm like, all right, cool.
Want me to get you one? Let's talk about meetups real quick, because I think with you being down there and you just going to a meetup, and they have a pretty successful meetup. That sounds like numbers, and meetups are not easy to do. Like, I don't think the first one is always popular, and then the second one, third one just dive. I don't know what that is about meetups and why that goes, but if you were to think of some tips that we would give for folks that are starting meetups, Dave, what would you say if you're thinking about starting one in your area?
Well, for me, I always have, it sounds weird, but I always have some sort of topic. And what I do a horrible job of letting people know what the topic is. Like, I should pick the topic, like I should pick next month's topic at this month's meeting. Like at the end of it, I should, what do you guys want to talk about? And then do it and make a graphic and promote it. I don't do that very well. So that's something. And just by having, even if it's like 5-10 minutes of content of a topic, that shows that, hey, I'm putting some time into this. It's worth showing up. The other thing that they did that I was kind of like, ooh, I missed that, is I used to, when I started the Northeast Ohio Podcasters Meetup, I worked at a training company. So I had classrooms. We could just show up there, and we had projectors. And so now we're meeting at like Books A Million, because it's right off the expressway and that whole 9 years. But I'm like, I kind of miss the ability to demonstrate stuff. Because now if I do that, I will, I'll bring printed handouts, or I'll try to show something on an iPad. But the fun thing is some months I'll have 5 people, other times I'll have 10. And iPads don't work when you've got 10 people. So I missed the ability to kind of demonstrate stuff. And that's what they were doing. They had this big giant screen. And what it is one of the organizers works at a location that's kind of one of those places where if you work from home, you can come work in this little United place. So that was kind of cool. So that would be that. And then just for me, at least, I've found more success having the meetup in one location. Mm-hmm. Like, it's been Books A Million now for a couple months, because for a while I was moving, and I was like, hell, let's do one in Cleveland. Let's do one in Akron. Let's do one in Canton. And I still kept getting 5 people. There were 5 different people.
Right.
And so that was kind of, a thing that was working, but not really. And then I just went, well, wait a minute, if I'm going to just, and I hate the word just, but if I'm just going to get 5 people, why don't we do it 5 minutes from my house?
Right. No, I think as a as a meetup leader, I think you have to make it as convenient for you as possible. Otherwise, you'll stop doing it. I mean, they're hard to do as it is. And if you got to drive an hour across town or you got to go in traffic, I think you're less likely to put kind of the energy into it. And I think the energy of the leader is what matters. Like if the leader doesn't have the energy, it's not going to happen. It's just, you just got to, so one, you got to make it kind of work out in your favor. And then I think location and time is key. And you can't, you cannot please everyone. You're going to miss people. It's just going to happen. But eventually people will adjust and adapt to that time. And if it's worth it, they'll come, they'll come to it. Yeah.
Cause it's something that I'm found that you'll get maybe 3 new people and then 1 will come back. And then you get another 3 new people and 1 will come back. So it's slowly building up. And Angus Nelson, who is one of the organizers of that, said we started off with like 5 people.
Right.
Because it took us a while, but we're getting up there.
Craig says in the chat room, I asked the chat room for some advice, and he said have focus, like editing, show art, promotion, so that every meetup becomes a learning experience. Take turns giving short talks about your podcast, and I think that, or bring a vendor in and give a vendor 30 minutes, like say, hey, come and talk about this mix pre, hey, come talk about this. We're going to have them talk about this for 30. And then there's going to be a round table where we're going to talk about this question. Maybe it's album art, or maybe it's intros, or maybe it's show notes, or it's those kinds of things. I think will keep people engaged. If they know they're going to learn something and get a chance to give some input. I think you have better chances there.
Yeah, that's what we do. We always have, at least at my meetups, it's always, we kind of greet each other. And then we usually introduce everybody, and then Dave will talk for 10, 15 minutes. And then it's like, okay, open Q&A, and at that point we kind of know everybody said, hey, I'm so-and-so, my podcast is such and such. And then inevitably somebody will say, hey, you said your show was about such and such. Can you, go deeper into that? And then somebody be like, I had a question. I'm trying to record Skype, blah, blah, blah. And we go into just the open Q&A. So, but yeah, I'm actually for the, I haven't set the date yet, but for, I'm jumping the gun. Yeah, we'll do this now. For our awesome supporters.
Oh, there you go. Hey, early is better than late. Usually we go late on these guys. So good.
What I'm doing is Colin Gray, Dr. Colin Gray, from, I believe it's thepodcasthost.com. He does a podcast, super nice guy. He's from Scotland, and he made this tool. I want to say it's something like a Thule. It's a bizarre little name, and I apologized to him at Podcast Movement because he gave me like a beta tester. And I said, dude, I logged in and I've never, that's as far as I got. I said, I feel bad because, you're looking for my opinion. I said, I'd give you one. I didn't. And he goes, dude, not a problem. And I said, would you be willing to do a demo for the School of Podcasting / Ask the Podcast Coach people? And he said, sure. So we're setting up the date on that. And it's probably, and that's the good news. The bad news is it's probably going to be sometime like 11 o'clock in the morning or something. Cause I said, dude, I don't want you staying up till like 4 a.m. to do this. I said, we'll find a time. And he was saying a lot of time it ends up being, for me at least, Eastern Standard. He goes, it'll probably be somewhere in the late morning. And I'm like, that's fine. I said, we'll just record it and then I'll throw it in. So that's coming. But speaking of our awesome supporters, if you go to askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome, we have awesome people like Greg from Debt Shepherd at debtshepherd.com, Jonathan Bloom at weeklyawesome.com, Glenn Hebert at horseradionetwork.com. Glenn just celebrated 10 years, put out a graphic. It's like, 50 sponsors, 4,000 episodes. It's insane. Josh Rivers over at podcastingexperiments.com, Max over at aviationnewstalk.com, and Shane from Spybrary.com. So thank you for being an awesome supporter. And then the other thing that I have here in my notes that I don't think people know, because I see a lot of people doing this in Facebook groups, is do you know how many episodes are in your feed, Mr. Cullison?
In which feed? Like Home Gadget Geeks?
Yeah.
Well, 365.
Okay, so if you go to iTunes, how many of those?
That was a trick question. Sorry. I was like, okay, so if I go to iTunes, what?
How many episodes do you see?
Oh, I don't know.
300.
Oh,
And people freak out. And this
oh,
is
that's right. That's right. Because there's a limit, right?
there's a limit. And so people will then like want to create a second version of their show. And so I said, well, wait a minute. If people subscribe in Apple Podcasts, let's just use them as an example, you see every one of your episodes. And so Kyle Bondo, who does Podfader, something about Podfading podcast. He also does Merchants of Dirt, which I love the name of that show. And he was saying, look, I'm using Pocket Casts, I think it was.
Okay.
He said, I think I only see 300. And we're all trying to figure out, hey, if iTunes is limiting it to 300 and these other apps are pulling on the back end of Apple, maybe they're only going to see 300. Maybe that's why people are doing this second. Like John Lee Dumas has like 6 versions of his show because he's got, whatever, thousands of episodes.
Yeah.
And it turns out that Kyle said, no. He goes, I have to hit a button and say like show more, but he can see all 628 episodes. So
isn't there a setting in PowerPress or something that dictates that?
Yeah, in PowerPress and in Libsyn, you can say how many episodes you want in your feed.
Yeah, and I think it's default 50 or something like that.
The default is 50, and it's a weird thing. If you make it too big, it might cause issues. But I was like, let's see what happens. So I put mine at infinity, and it just
wasn't that in the early days of RSS? Wasn't there some problems with feed size, and so that's why that was invented? Something like that?
When you put your feed into FeedBurner. And so that was
that's the perfect story. There's a story of a mom who's baking a ham, and she always cuts the end of the ham off before she puts it in the oven. And the daughter says, "Mom, why do you cut the end of the ham off?" And she says, "I don't know. My mom always did that." So Grandma came over the next week, and the daughter asked Grandma, "Hey, Grandma, why do you always cut your end of the ham off?" She's like, "Oh, because my pan was only this big." Right. And so that's exactly one of those kinds of situations where, we have technology has probably outgrown some of those problems now. We probably don't have those same problems. We could probably show unlimited amounts in the feeds now. It's just not what it used to be. So I don't know. Maybe it's one of those things. I guess I would never even think twice about show 301 or 301 shows back from now. Like, I kind of think, is it really that important? It was probably an awful show anyways. And so, and it's old, do I really want him to see it? So maybe I don't, Yeah.
Cause Kyle was like, hey, the earliest version I see is an episode called Your First Podcast Always Stings. I go, that's my first episode. I go, if you can see that, you can see them all.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I just don't, I don't know if that's that big of a deal. Do you think?
I don't, but it goes back. I think we mentioned this last week, that I'm really starting to think people are over. It's kind of one of those things. I was thinking about this today. On one hand, I tell people, plan and figure out who your audience is and, do this and do that. But on the other hand, I also go, throw it out there and see what happens. And I do see, especially at the meetup where people are, when you're 6 months into planning your podcast, I'm like, that's red flag in my book. That's a little.
They got to feel comfortable though, and some people just are, their talent makeup, right? Their design is set to perfection, or set to, that 95% or 99% perfection level. And it's hard for them. I think you and I are both wired to just launch and maybe not launch with the greatest quality, but 80% is good enough, right? And you can still continue to move forward with it. So I feel for those people, but usually when they do launch, their quality is much better than my quality was when I launched.
Yeah.
So you have to, I think you have to kind of be patient with that, and just let them find their space. Dave, it is a tough, if you're going to iterate on this thing for a year, I don't know, maybe that's worth it for some people. Maybe they need that year of learning before they're ready to go. And we just need to kind of let them be until they launch.
Yeah. Daniel in the chat, I'm totally rocking. I got the iPad over there. I got the chat room on my phone.
Nice.
So Daniel in the chat room said FeedBurner's limit was raised from 512 kilobytes to 1 megabyte a couple years ago. Blueberry's podcastmirror.com, their limit is 4 megabytes. So, and he's not sure what FeedBlitz is, but so yeah, that was a problem back in the day with FeedBurner.
Well, I just don't think it's that much of an issue anymore for most people. I mean, it's just not one of those things. Hey, just to circle back around, Quasi had, when we were talking about meetup stuff, I thought he had a good idea. He says, at a local meetup here in Vegas, the organizer created a podcast for the meetup group to allow people to practice. So to kind of what we were talking about, like some people just need that kind of push to get going. And if they're afraid to start doing it or whatever. So from talking on the mic, editing and uploading, then allow people to record a short 10-minute podcast from the meetup for the podcast to plug their show in the group, right? So how cool would that be? You're at a meetup, you
that's cool.
have some microphones, practice some stuff, create some promos. You know, it would be awesome, Dave, if I was at a meetup with you and I'd say, hey, Dave, let's sit down and let's create a 20-second bumper where you say, you know, something like, hey, Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting, great to be here with Jim on Home Gadget Geeks. Come and listen, you know, something like that, some kind of bumper, right? And you could record those right there. That'd be kind of cool.
That's what Jeff Brown does for his Read the Lead podcast. He has, because he interviews authors about books and such, and he will ask them, will you do a bumper for me? So he starts off every show with the author going, whatever, you're listening to Jeff Brown, Read the Lead, I'm so-and-so from such and such or whatever. So he starts off with a bumper from a guest. And I'm like, that's kind of a cool idea that I might have.
Yeah, I don't hear, and maybe I'm not in that space anymore, but I don't hear a lot of those cross promotional bumpers like I used to. That was a big deal for a while where we had everybody kind of sharing stuff, and I haven't. Maybe I've dropped out of those circles. It's very possible. I'm not following those kinds of people anymore. So,
no, I think it's more. I think it's more let's swap interviews than let's swap promos.
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe. Yeah, maybe so. I love having other podcasters on my podcast because they know how to do it. They have a microphone, right?
I open up the floodgates to start taking interviews on my weight loss show, and the first person showed up with a Blue Yeti on the wrong setting. Oh. And I was like, oh, I miss podcasters. So,
it's the quickest way if you have guests. I think getting other podcasters as guests is the best. You get the best quality, the fastest. You get some good promotion. They know how to do it, right? I just think that's a good place to start. Yeah. I just connected. Rich Hay is one of the podcasters in my circles, and he does Observe, this one called Observe Tech Podcast, and talk about a different genre. Rich does a quick rundown of the week's news, but he doesn't. It's no commentary. It's just what happened. So he's like, this happened and some details. This happened and some details. It is like, rapid fire machine gun. If you want to know what's going on in the space without any chit chat or commentary, it's all Rich. Now, when I listen to that podcast, I get frustrated because when I listen to it on 1.4 speed and he already talks fast. And so there's moments I literally stop it and have to breathe. I'm like, okay, Rich, maybe I should slow this thing down, But that's another way of doing a podcast that's really different. He rapid fire news bits. But Rich comes on every 6 months for me and gives an update on Microsoft and Windows, and some of the stuff is his niche. So it's been really, and he looks forward to it. I've got this podcaster, Erin Lawrence. She's in Canada and she makes videos and works for Best Buy. She's perfect in my genre. And so she fits in and comes in, and she's great on camera, and she knows how to kind of work the audience and make sure she's bringing great content. I never have to worry about her content. She has 3 or 4 stories that she brings in from her blog, which is awesome. So for me, it's really, really helpful to partner with other podcasters.
Yeah. Ross says the Blue Yeti has a right setting. Actually, it has a better setting. Let's go that route. If you put it, I always tell people, look for the one that looks like a heart. It's kind of like this. Put it on that, get a pop filter on that thing and get up on it. It's not a bad mic. I always said it's that most people have it set to the pick up in every direction. It's about 3 feet from them, and it's. I wish I didn't. I bought the USB version, and I wish I had bought the Pro version, because I would plug that thing in to the. I don't like doing it USB. I would plug that thing XLR, put it on my mount, because I've got a what do you call those things where it goes in on the it's got a rack. I keep wanting to call it a rack, but it's a mount, right? I've got the mount and the windscreen for it. Okay, yeah.
Which were not cheap. I mean, that windscreen is like $65.
Yeah, I always tell people, by the time you buy the shock mount and the pop filter for the Blue Yeti, you've spent 3 times as much if you bought something else. Daniel says the best setting on the Blue Yeti is remove from cart. And he said they also then have it pointed incorrectly.
Yeah.
So
Well, they try to talk into the top of it.
Yeah.
I don't see many having that problem anymore. And I think that Yeti Blue is the best first mic you ever buy that you move away from pretty quick, because you realize it literally picks up, even on the right settings, it picks up everything. Its field is gigantic, and it literally picks up anything. My chair squeaks a little bit, you're hearing it.
Right.
So even with all the settings right, and this is where USB on it's not very good, because you don't get a lot of control on those things. You have a volume control to your headset. You've got a little bit of a gain control on the mic itself, but it's not granular enough. And so for the USB version of it, man, that is where you need to have kind of a quiet room, and it needs to be well treated, and it will pick up sound bouncing off the walls. So I just don't like it because it's not as forgiving as a mic. If when you get it tuned right, it'll really sound pretty good.
Yeah, because I know Rob Walsh uses one for his Today in Podcasting, so it can sound decent, but you just got to have the right technique. And now they have a thing called the Yeti Caster, and it's basically a big boom arm, so it's already got the shock mount, it's hanging upside down. But again, to me, I'm just like, it's not horrible. Just there are better options for a lot less money. So
it'll be. We talked about this last week, but it will be interesting to see what Logitech does with them.
Yeah.
And Yeti's marketing prowess has been really good, because they give a lot of stuff away. They're in a lot of places. They have sexy looking. I mean, they're engineered to look really sexy. That's the thing. Blue mics, they look fabulous.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they are incredible the way they look, and they just look good.
And they're in Best Buy. That's when I walked in. I'm like, oh, here's another reason why everybody's buying Blue Yeti. They're in Best Buy.
They are, and they're fairly inexpensive. And I think they're going to clearance. I bet Logitech, as they come out with a different line, or changing the brand, changing the names on the boxes and things like that, I bet those things get clearanced out of there. Best Buy, you'll probably be able to pick one up for $50.
That'll be interesting to see. If you would think they would keep the Blue name. It's not like they're gonna, you spent all this money building a brand. I don't know.
It will. No, I'm sure Logitech does not. They are very brand savvy. So you will see Logitech show up on that, but maybe it's going to be Blue by Logitech or something, and then they'll have, remember, the Yeti is the name of the mic. So they have a whole bunch of different, they have a bunch of different mics on it in their line. So I don't know. Powered by, I doubt it'll be that, but it will be, I don't think they'll do the name change. Daniel says Logitech probably won't change the name.
Yeah,
they don't change it for other brands, but they will. They own Jabra, and they haven't really slapped their name all over that one. So maybe I could be wrong. Maybe they'll leave it.
What is Jabra? It sounds like
Jabras. They make. They're known for making Bluetooth headsets, and they made plugged-in headsets before. So they're in that office, they're in the enterprise space where they make kind of office equipment, and they're known for their headsets. So pretty good. They were one of the first ones out to really, they were making those little Bluetooth that we thought everybody wanted to have, but you look like a douche when you're walking around with one of those talking to the air.
It is weird that it's because I was walking around recording things on Facebook in the parking lot here, and people are walking out, and they just see a guy holding his phone up talking in the air, and they're like, it's just normal now that there's a guy just talking into his phone. Or what
is it normal? I still don't think it's completely normal.
Probably not.
People still look.
I don't know if they look at me like I'm crazy now. They just go, oh, look at the douchebag.
Look at the important guy. Oh, look at the important guy. I'm on my Autobahn, Germany. I'm going to China, first class.
Yeah. I did see this question in one of the Facebook groups. This is from Tim Smith. It says, there are times I use BossJock for recording, and we'll stop right there. I did talk to Dave Mansueto, who's one of the guys behind BossJock. And I said, dude, what's up with BossJock? And he said, we're either going to fix it or take it out behind the barn and shoot it.
Mm.
And he says they're trying to re-engineer it on a different kind of platform, but he's like, yeah, so they're working on it. They haven't completely abandoned it. But in this case, Tim says he's using BossJock on his iPhone. Works great, except for right now I'm having others contribute MP3 files. The problem with this is that the volumes are all over the place. First, you can't hear, then your ears are being blown out. There is a volume slider bar in BossJock, but you have to eyeball it, and it doesn't work very well. Even when I use it, it doesn't seem to make much difference. Maybe there's some volume leveling in BossJock that I don't see, but I don't think so. What I truly need is an app that works like the Levelator. Is there such a thing? Is there some other simple fix that does not involve, and here's the thing, going to the computer? Because I was going to say, oh, Auphonic. And I'm like, you can actually, there is an Auphonic app. I think you could do it that way. But I just heard, I can never remember, help me out, chat room, the name of the editing thing on the iPad. It's like Ferret or Verit or something. But I just read where somebody was saying that now has built-in leveling and noise removal. So it's kind of got but they were saying that Ferret, yeah, or Ferrite, Ferrite. And somebody was just saying this is like the best thing ever. Because I'm kind of like, look, if you're going to do a podcast where you need to edit, like, love it or not, get a computer, would you?
Yeah.
And so the more I need to start examining this software, because it's sounding more and more like you can actually do some editing. To me, I can't see, because sometimes I do some pretty precision editing if I'm in the mood, and I can't see doing that with my fingers on an iPad. I was like, I think that would drive me crazy. But if that seems to be that is now seems to be the go-to now for, as BossJock gets a little more and more old in the tooth here, that Ferrite for whatever that is the thing to play with, at least. So I need to check that out. I just don't know that I'm still of the school, and this is where maybe I'm the old guy saying get off my lawn. To me, I'm like, you need a computer. I mean, in the end, just because you can do it on an iPad, I'm like, it's just so much easier to do on a computer.
Mm-hmm. No, it really is. It just is. And audio processing does not take that much horsepower. Yeah. So for most people, even an older PC would work, or an older Mac. Either way, it's just I don't know how you do it mobile. That would drive me crazy. That would drive me crazy.
Daniel says, Alexa, edit my podcast.
How great would that be? Actually, that'd be a really good service for Auphonic in Alexa, where you say, right, pull it in, and just it would run through Auphonic's service. That would be pretty cool. I'd love to. Although it's one click. Come on, maybe two. I got to click import, then the file, and then it's actually 3 or 4. Then it's, because on Auphonic, right, you got to click produce. You got to say do it, and then there's another screen, and then it's like, okay, no, I really wanted you to start it, so you have to click it twice on Auphonic on the website. I use the website version of it too, so I upload it. I ought to, now that I'm thinking about this. One of the things that takes me the longest now in my production flow is that just the upload to Auphonic. So, I'm uploading an hour and 15 minutes worth of audio, and their servers must not be able to take those very fast, because it takes a good 45 minutes for me to upload that thing. And then it's got to process, and that's not too bad. And I know on the desktop, I can just do it all locally, right? I could buy their desktop software and just do it all locally. I have a pretty powerful PC here. Maybe I ought to think about switching over. I paid for the web service. What would I need to do to get desktop? Do I have to buy something new?
You have to buy I want to say $80, but for me, the time it saved waiting for things to upload was like, and the things that the web version does that the desktop doesn't, like, it does the ID3 tagging. It will actually, if you want, you can upload like an intro and an outro, and it'll stitch it in there for you. It'll upload it to Libsyn and other services, I'm assuming. So it does all the stuff to where it's kind of a one-stop shop, but I don't need that. I just needed, I'm more interested in level out the audio, remove some of the hiss, and I'll do the rest.
No, I just love the quality I get with it when I'm done. I put it early in my workflow so that I get that upload running like first.
Right.
so that it has its time to. The problem is I'm uploading that, and then I start uploading YouTube videos, and then I'm moving my video RSS videos over to Mediafire, and you get about 4 or 5 different things uploading. I'm only 10 up, and so I fill the whole pipe up.
Yeah. Yeah. Emily says Joel Sharpton does the majority of his editing using his iPad. And have we figured out how to pronounce this yet? Ferrite?
Ferrite. Let's just go with that.
Ferrite.
Sounds better than Ferret.
Yeah. And some plugins that are much cheaper than the desktop versions. And then Mike was saying, what is it with these people that think an iPad is magic and you can do everything on it? Because, well, you can't. It's an iPad. So it'll be interesting to see how that's going to turn out. But I'm with you. I love Auphonic, but maybe it's just me. I like being on a computer. I'm just like, to me, it's just easier. But
it's like creating graphics. That's really hard to do on a mobile device. Not impossible, and some can do it. But I guess it depends on the tools that you use. But this is get off my lawn, Dave. We are keyboard and mouse kind of people, and it's like, Ferrite, I guess, is what Emily is saying. Thanks for the phonetic.
There we go. Yeah,
right.
Eileen says your interface is kind of scary. That was me. I mean, I've learned a lot of software, and it did not scream intuitive to me. Kind of like, okay, I understand multi-track. I've used about everything there is to use on that, and it was just like, I'm going to need to read the manual on this. But that's probably due to the fact that it probably does a fair amount of stuff. But I was like, not one I'm just going to open up and.
Well, but think about your that new hardware that you got, that Mix Pre 6. That's not necessarily take it out of the box, but no, that's not true. You literally took it out of the box, set it up without reading the instructions, and you have it working.
Yeah, the only thing I looked for that I downloaded the manual is I was trying to see if there was a limit to the size of the SD card you could put into it. And when it said, like, the one thing was like 512 gigs, I'm like, I'm going to take that as a no limit SD card. And man, are those things cheap. I got a
what'd you get? You went to Best Buy to pick it up, so you paid retail. You didn't even get it off Amazon. Yes. What'd you pay?
It was, I think it's 128 gigs,
right?
$20.
Yeah.
And I was like, done. Yeah. And it's in the whole thing. And then you start, that's one of those things that you looked at and I was like, oh wait, I can do this one, which is even more, but it's, it's another 10 milliseconds faster. And then all of a sudden I look up and I'm looking at $80. I'm like, wait a minute. 128 gigs is a huge amount of space.
It's pretty ridiculous, the pricing now. We on Home Gadget Geeks, we've been spending a bunch of shows talking about SSD pricing, and SSDs are now down to 15 cents a gig. Ooh. And that's not even the best pricing. We've seen it as low as 13 cents a gig. And so we're talking about a terabyte at $150. And all of a sudden you kind of go, why don't I have an SSD drive? Why am I not? So if you're still, your main desktop is still a spinning disk, now is the time. Like, you can get, even on the Windows side, you really need, my recommendation would be nothing smaller than 250 gig, right? Windows doesn't take up that much, but it's just one of those things. You could do 120 if you wanted to, that would get you there. But those drives right now are $40 or $50. So you could really, if you haven't thought this through, maybe it's time to replace that spinner and put an SSD in. They're super cheap.
My stepson had an old iMac or Mac, the little thing that looks like a toaster, Mac Mini, and he put an SSD card in it, and it was like night and day. It was a completely different machine. And then it's one of those things that I now know. It's funny you say that, because I was thinking about this the other day, that I should start putting away, I don't know, $50 a month. I have there's a couple online banking things you can do where you can put money away that you don't see it. It's still there, but you don't see it. Because I'm like, if I did that, in a year, I could. It's going to be time to upgrade my computer. I've had it for probably 5 or 6 years. It's fine. It's doing what I want. But I noticed when I upgraded to the latest version of Camtasia, which is funny because they're saying, hey, latest version of Camtasia, faster editing, faster blah, blah, blah. And my computer's kind of choking on it just a little bit. And I'm like, you know what? Okay. Because I was tempted to actually downgrade to the old version because it just seems like, especially when I go to render a video, it's like, well, I guess I'll go walk around the block and maybe do some laundry and I'll come back and it'll be done. It's really significantly slower. And I actually went out and there were other people that are like, hey, it seems slower. And they're like, nope. And I'm like, So
yeah. Can I get really nerdy? Let me get tech nerdy for just a second on this. This pertains to everybody around slowness of their PCs. So
sort of like jingle, like nerd out.
We need Weird Al's White and Nerdy as a promo song. For most people, there was this thing called Spectre and Meltdown that happened, last fall. It was a big deal. Basically, Intel kind of admitted that in a lot of the code that we have out there for the processing, there was some guessing of things that were going on that they were making through hardware and software on calculations that could be watched, and that information could be stolen off the drive. So in other words, your processor was not secure. Let's just put it that way, right? So it's a big deal. There's a lot of things, but they were doing this for speed enhancements on processors going back like 10 years. So everybody's PC had this vulnerability. So everybody's been taking that out of so Microsoft's and Apple and even ARM processors have been affected in this. Everybody's taking this speculation piece out of the code, but it slows everything down because they were doing this to speed things up. So now, of course, it's like, well, okay, sorry, we can't do this because it creates a gigantic vulnerability. Chances are, if you've upgraded your firmware, which is what you have to do to get rid of this vulnerability. By the way, for most people, this is a vulnerability they'll never have to worry about in a million years. It's not like someone snooping on your computer, but you still probably want to be secure, right? So if you've done a massive upgrade or you've upgraded your firmware, or you've done some of those kinds of things like that, you may have noticed things are a little slower than they were before. You may see that. So if all of a sudden you kind of go, man, this PC doesn't seem as fast as it used to be. Well, that it may be because they've updated the software and the firmware to take some of those unsecure bits out. It would really affect people if they're using older processors where you were just on the edge, like of not being able to do this. This will push you over the edge. So if you have a 4 or 5 year computer and all of a sudden it seems slower, it's probably time to upgrade. And that'll all be fixed in the future. And modern processors don't worry about those kinds of things. But it is one of those pieces that they made a big deal about it last fall, then haven't been talking about it, but been slowly rolling out these patches and these updates and stuff like that. If all of a sudden you realize things are slower than they were, chances are you've been affected by it. So they're super nerdy for you. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but that could affect you.
I just realized, I'm going to nerd out with you. If you can throw that in the chat room.
Yeah.
This is from Scott Johnson, who does the Computer Tutor Florida show. And I've yet to use this tool myself, but I trust Scott. He's a computer repair guy. And he was talking about Void, VOID, tools.com. And he said, if you're doing any kind of searching for files on your computer, he goes, I don't understand why Windows doesn't have something this fast. He goes, but I don't know what it does, but it somehow makes searching for your computer. Because I've done that on occasion. Like, wait, I know I have this file somewhere. And then you go in and there are tools, but it's like, it's another one where you're like, okay, let it search. And it'll, I'll go walk around the block and maybe it'll find it because it will eventually find it if it's there. But
it probably builds an index because if you build indexes on Windows, it actually goes pretty fast. Just that's turned off by default and creates a lot of overhead. So it probably goes in and indexes them for you.
But I'm glad you said you were talking about computers that are like right on the edge, because that reminded me of the phrase on the bubble, which just dawned on me that I read our awesome supporters and I looked at people that were donating $20 a month and I forgot our biggest one, which of course is Josh Liston from onthebubble.com podcast. So
Josh, thank you.
Yeah. So I'm like, oops, that's what I get.
Hopefully he listened all the way to this point.
He probably quit when he didn't listen. Well, the fun thing is I thought I had saved that PowerPoint in Microsoft OneDrive because I hardly ever use OneDrive, but I thought I had just for giggles. And I get here and I'm like, no, you didn't. I don't. It's saved locally on your hard drive somewhere. I'm like, oh, I got it.
Yeah, OneDrive's really handy for that. If you're a Windows guy or gal, you can.
all my PowerPoint presentations for speaking and stuff like that, I always end up saving them at least once to OneDrive, so that if for some reason something happens and I get to the event and I got to speak, I've got one in the cloud. And for whatever reason, I use OneDrive for that, and I use Dropbox for everything else. But
well, and you can, it doesn't have to be synced to your computer to get to it. You could go to office.com or whatever, and log in with your Windows credentials and pull it right off the web. So that works as well. In fact, you might, if you are doing cloud syncing with some of your, especially with some of your bigger podcast files, you might not want those to sync to every single location. If you've got a smaller device and it has a smaller hard drive, you may want to think twice about having your OneDrive turned on. Otherwise, it's going to try and sync everything. And in a hotel, that could be a nightmare. Like, you could bring the hotel Wi-Fi down.
Everybody else in the chat room is talking about the new, and I will.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
I'm going to say something nice about Anchor. It's a new thing. They're finally doing something that will actually make money. And what they're doing is ripping off Patreon. And they have from what I saw this morning, I looked into this a little bit. Because if you've never listened to the show, I'm not a fan of Anchor. I have to, well, I'll get to that on a whole nother level, but they have this new thing where you get yourwebsite.com anchor.com/your show, whatever. When you click there, you can support people with either, I think it's $1, $5, or $10 donations. And they're ever so slightly cheaper than Patreon. So they're coming out. And so I look at this and go, well, at least finally they're making some money. The fun thing it's going to be is if you don't have any listeners, then that's not going to work. And Rob Walsh hinted in his speech at Podcast Movement that the median downloads for people on Anchor is 0, as in, like, most people that are using that tool have no listeners. And I know that's not the case, but I thought that was an interesting stat. And speaking of interesting stats, because Rob can't say where he got that info from, there's a thing when Anchor came out that they said now, like, 1 out of 3 new podcasts is on Anchor. And then what was interesting is James Cridlin had, or no, I think it was in their press release. And there is if you want to have fun, here we go. All the nerds, all the man, if you love stats, kiss your Saturday goodbye. Go over to chartable.com. And this is kind of I don't know. I believe I signed up just to see what it is, but it's kind of one of those, see your rankings. And they have, like, charts from all these different apps. So Pocket Cast, Breaker, Podcast Addict, Stitcher, of course, Apple Podcasts. And then it's like every, like, just, if I want to see the top philosophy podcasts and things like that. And then you can go into each store. So the top podcasts on philosophy in Great Britain, you can seriously just lose yourself in stats in that. But the thing I thought that was interesting is, if that is the source of this quote, that 1 out of every 3 podcasts is on Anchor, I don't see the chart that would show that. I don't see, like, a newest podcast, because that'd be an insane chart, because according to Todd Cochran, there are about 1,000 new podcasts every week, which would be 300 shows on Anchor every week. And I'm like, well, maybe that's an option. We'll see. But I just thought it was interesting that they didn't quote exactly where that came from, but I'll be interested to see. To me, like I said, I don't like Anchor because of their terms of service. And there's a guy, I will have to give him kudos here. Jordan Hagens, Hagens. When I get home, one of the things I'm doing is I'm going to look up Facebook terms of service. I'm going to look up Twitter terms of service and YouTube terms of service, because he keeps screaming it's the same terms of service as Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And I'm like, no, it's not, because I'm pretty sure, and this is where I'm like, I got to get pretty out of there. I just got to be sure that if I delete my stuff on Facebook, it's gone. Now, granted, the internet writes in ink, so I'm sure somebody could have copied and pasted something, but I'm pretty sure when I delete Facebook, it's not on Facebook anymore. And with Anchor, they have the right, they still own your stuff. They could do whatever they want with it. And that's the big stinker for me, besides the fact that they block your your access to stats in Apple Podcasts. You have to work around for that. But
Dave, it would be interesting to get to the bottom of, they need to have some rights to your material to be able to broadcast it, to be able to distribute it, right? And I think that's been the sticky point, or the point of misunderstanding in this Anchor thing, is that I think some people are saying that no, that gives them the rights to do anything they want. And I think the other side is saying, no, wait a minute. Twitter says that and Facebook says that, because they also have to have some rights to your content to be able to do those things. Well, and so it would be, I'm glad you said you were going to do this, because I've been hearing this argument back and forth, and I'd like to get to the bottom of it. I think it's going to take a lawyer, but I think, because we're talking about a lot of legalese in there, and I'm hearing a lot of shouting and hearsay without anybody actually quoting the terms of service. So I'd love to see you do that. Be great.
Yeah, there's that, and then remind me later. We actually have an audio question. I totally forgot about that. But I miss Eileen saying that you can now toggle off the Anchor logo, and post roll, because they put Anchor branding in your show. Like, this show is brought to you by Anchor or whatever. So, but Ross says, can you take other people's content from their podcast on Anchor, or is it only what someone calls in another person's account? See, that's the thing. For me, it just sounded like they own your content, and almost every media host has some sort of thing. Because, like, what if we want to show Mark Maron's logo on a Libsyn page? Well, we have the rights to do that. We don't own the logo, and if you leave, we can't keep showing it, but we have the ability to show your logo. I think if we wanted to, I don't know if we have the right to cut up your stuff, but that's where I just need to dig into terms, do a big old deep dive into terms, and go that route.
And there's some interpretation in those terms too, which is, the art of something being legal or not legal is all really about the interpretation of it. So it'll be interesting to see. I do think, my opinion is, we've been a little unfair on Anchor. I also think that Anchor has been very aggressive in what they're doing. So it's a new model. I am kind of glad we've been talking about Anchor and not SoundCloud, which is, I don't think I've heard SoundCloud in 6 months, which is great. So Anchor did replace, Anchor became the new thing to beat, as opposed to SoundCloud. So I'm glad for that.
The new dog to smack. Yeah. Miss Eileen,
I was trying to stay away from those metaphors. I started getting into that. I'm like, there's nothing I can say in that that's going to be appropriate.
Yeah. If you think about it, beating dead horses, there are all sorts of,
yeah, I guess that's kicking. Yeah.
Yeah. The story behind the phrase beating a dead horse. You cannot take other people's content unless they call into your show, says Miss Eileen, to which Daniel says, and then somebody chatted and I lost. Here we go. Anchor's terms of service makes you grant rights to fellow users to use your content you upload to Anchor. There's no distinguishment between creator content and listener content.
Yeah.
So we'll have to dig into this stuff.
I wonder how much of those terms of service were influenced by the way Anchor originally started, and then has moved into podcasting. And I wonder if those terms of services have not been, because they didn't necessarily start with a focus on podcasting, right?
Bullhorn is a service right now that is Anchor 1.0. It's a thing where you do little baby snippets, and then people can somehow comment on those or whatever. But
yeah, for my day job, I spend a lot of time looking at our terms of services, privacy, those things for our coaches. And I just, even our own, I read through them sometimes and I'm like, this is super vague. So this is kind of what this means. And even then I don't try to interpret. Like, I'm like, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't interpret. Maybe this is what it says,
Maybe you have to pull in Gordon Firemark. I'll have to pick out the stuff and go, okay.
That would actually be a pretty good interview, Dave, to have him take a look at this and give his legal, his legal thoughts on it.
But hey, I'm going to roll the music. Just
are we there?
The question is,
do it.
Hear this? You probably should not hear that.
No, I don't hear it.
2 minutes and 6 seconds from now, we'll fade the music up, and that'll be the end of that. But yeah, for me, the only thing that I like about this is Anchor's actually trying to make some money, because they're spending money on studios in New York City. They spent a boatload of money at Podcast Movement on parties and stuff. You know, they keep adding more features, of which I go, okay, that's not going to bring in any money. That's not going to bring in any money. That's not going to bring in any money. So I'll be interested to see what they have to say. So
Yeah.
but Jim, thanks for helping me out with taking over the.
All I really did was host the YouTube channel. That's all. That's all I did. I'm a podcaster, so it's easy to do. But I appreciate you. I'm glad you took a chance on the hotel room. So that's this.
I was really surprised. I have a Verizon hotspot, and it was worse than the hotel Wi-Fi. And I was like, "Oh, that's my backup plan." And my backup plan stinks. So I was like, "Please, hotel Wi-Fi." So, what's coming up on the AverageGuy.tv?
Yeah, we are back to news reviews. I mentioned we talked a lot about hard drives lately, and so we've been kind of focusing on deals. So if you're into tech and tech gadgets and deals, join us over theaverageguy.tv and check us out.
Awesome. And I will be sharing more things that I learned in Nashville. And there it is. I'm like, I don't hear the music. On this week's episode of the School of Podcasting. And I'll probably be reviewing some gear. I've got gear out my ears these days to play with. So that'll be coming up in the future. I've still got the Tascam to play with. I've got the Mic Me to play with. And I've got a Mix Pre 6. So thanks for tuning in. Stick around for some post show. Yay. All right. And speaking, I got to leave that volume up. So here's the question from Brian, who is in the chat room.
Yeah. Hi, Dave. I have a question for Jim.
I got to leave that volume up.
I was Googling and is Home Gadget Geeks and found that on number 4, he is ranked with All Sound. And I was just wondering if Jim can let us know how is he finding allsound.com working for him. Thanks, guys.
And I was thinking, I don't know that Jim is on All Sound.
That sounds familiar.
They did have a free version where you could have like 20 hours of space for free.
Yeah, let me look.
I used All Sound. All Sound was one of the companies that was saying before Apple did, we can show you listener metrics. We can show how long people are listening. And I was like, ooh. So I went over and was using them for a while. And that's where I learned that stat can only be given if you control the whole process. So for me, that's actually why I started the Alexa Cast, was to try Awesound, and that you only get listener stats for people that listen on the website using the Awesound player, which for me was, I think, less than 2% of my audience was listening online. So
yeah, and uploading with them, it's coming back to me now. It's been maybe a year since I've used Awesound. I think wasn't Mark the CEO that we had him on? I had him on my show, and I think he's popped on here a couple times. Yeah. I used it. I didn't find I found uploading was weird to it, and their UI is difficult to kind of work with and understand, and it just wasn't easy. It wasn't I use some other services like Mixcloud or Shout Engine or some of those, and they're much easier to work with. So yeah, no, I'm still out there, Dave. I just logged into it. I totally forgotten. I haven't been out there in a while. I just was not. And I haven't. Maybe I should go back to it and check it out and just kind of see what
it's like. Yeah, I had the same thing. I told him. I said, "Hey, I came over to test it. I tested it, and I that's the exact same thing." I said, "Your interface is a little weird," and I just found there were things that I'm like, and it was different. It was one of those things like different doesn't always mean wrong, but it was just like this doesn't make sense. And I remember the interface seemed like very like 2004-ish. It was I almost expected animated GIFs kind of stuff. But he's a super nice guy and he was super helpful. I think he is Awesound at the time.
Yeah.
He made it super easy and made me a special player so it matched my color on my website. So he's super willing to open for feedback and work with you. But at the time, the interface for me was like, And then the fact that I learned that, I'm going to get this listener statistic only for people that listen on my website. And I was like, oh, well, that's okay. And I like that because I was like, oh, it's tops 3%.
Well, and he was doing monetization, I think, before others were. I think that was also one of the deals, is that he was getting that monetization piece post, pre, mid, maybe. I could be wrong on all those, but I think that's what he was shooting for. But yeah, I'm in the interface right now, uploading, and it was, I don't know, it just wasn't as intuitive as I wanted it to be. And I had a hard time after the fact. Once I uploaded it, kind of like tracking it on the site was interesting, right?
I remember their stats remind me a little bit about Omni Studio, where you'd go into stats and it would spin. Like they had to calculate or refresh the stats when you got there. And I just told him, I said, compared to Libsyn and Blueberry, you log in and here's the stats. I go, I appreciate that you're trying to give me the most up-to-date stats. I go, but I'm not going to sit there for 15 seconds while it spins.
Well, and it seemed like too, his player was kind of out ahead of everybody else's.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this was a couple of years ago, I think, if we go back to that. And so, but I'm in here uploading a track right now, just as I'm thinking through, like, oh, maybe I should check this out again. And it doesn't feel like it's changed that much since the last time I was in here. I think you can also create transcripts out of the out of it, and I think it's free allowance, varied by plan. So I guess excuse me, I think it kind of depends on the plan that you have.
Well, I'm not sold on transcripts, and especially free transcripts. I'm like,
Right.
that's where it's like, I could be wrong. Maybe they're using some different service, but so far it's been kind of icky.
Well, and right now I use a teal green for my show, and the website's blue. I should probably go in and change that if I was gonna do that. But yeah, wow, that was a blast from the past, Dave.
It is.
I was like, awesome. When he first said that, I'm like, why does that sound familiar? Hey, Ross.
Hey, Jim. How you doing? Hey, Dave.
How are you?
Good. So I'm super excited that you got the Mix Pre.
Yeah, I was hired by somebody. They're like, hey, I bought one. This is my excuse, by the way.
Right.
It's still pretty lame. But as somebody, they're like, hey, can you help me do this? And I thought I could do it with the manual. And I'm trying to walk him through it. And I was like, you know what? So I thought, I don't know that everybody's going to buy these things because they are expensive, but I thought this might be a case to.
What was retail for the 6?
The 6 is
$8.99.
Yeah, it's like $900. And I was like, ouch.
Yeah.
But like I said, when I go home, I'm not kidding. I'm doing a garage sale. You'll see in Facebook, hey, if you want this old Behringer, and if you want this one and that one, and it's like, because I do love this. I mean, just I opened it, I unboxed it last night, and I'm like, oh, I remember you now. You're so lovely. You're so easy.
My friend's back.
Yeah, my friend is back. Exactly. And,
what mic are you using with it?
right now, I'm just using this is an AT 2005. So this is my
coming through.
Yeah, I actually have. It's now a collector's item. I have a Vox. I have the Vox that looks just like this one. That I thought was another 2000. I don't remember buying two, and I turned it over, and there's nothing on. I'm like, oh, this is the Vox. Okay, so.
Do you think the preamps are better on the Mix Pre than the DBX?
That's a good question.
Like, is this going to replace the DBX, or you?
No. I love you will pry the DBX from my cold down hand. No, I'll plug my microphone into the DBX and the DBX into this to then go into the USB kind of thing. To me, of course, I'm not using an SM7B. I'm using so I might not have to push my mic as hard as you have to push yours, but
right.
I guess I could do a test and see with and without, because these do definitely sound cleaner than like the H5, but we're talking, this much, like you have to really look at the noise in a
right.
Like, I don't think it's going to make that much of a difference, but it just seemed to sound cleaner when I was playing with it originally.
So, I mean, you in part got it to work with a client, but of course, you liked it anyway. But are you thinking it's more because of the form factor and you can get rid of a lot of other gear, or is it the quality of the conversions, or what is it about it that, because I'm still like I'm going to keep mine, I'm sure, but I'm still like every day, like, you sure this sounds better than your audio interface? You sure this sounds better than your audio interface? Because it's more than double the price.
No, I would not buy it for the sound, because it's better, but only if you're in a quiet room with headphones doing this.
Right.
And nobody listens like that. So no, but for me, the travelability, and the biggest thing is, I go from a mixer that's this big to one that's the size of a, toast, basically.
Right.
So I like the space thing. I like that it's the reason I bought my last mixer is it was a mixer and a recorder.
Right.
And that's the biggest reason why I bought this. And the fact that it's much more portable. And the thing is, because normally I would like, portable, I hate having to rip apart my studio preset. Right. So I can go in and say, oh, it's time to do Ask the Podcast Coach. The auxiliary goes to channel 3. This goes to that. And the output is whatever. And I just go preset 1 and boom, I'm ready to go. Plug everything in and we're set. So that was the one. And then the final one that I was like, oh, finally is I didn't figure out how to do this yet, but I'll be able to push a button and put markers in. And I went, ooh, that's especially for this show. So when we change subjects, I can go do that and see, okay, there's a new subject. And that makes the show notes get cut in half in terms of like, at this time we talked about this and that. And somebody had asked, since I'm mentioning that, how do you do time codes? All you have to do is type in, like, if it's 17 minutes and 38 seconds, 17:38. And not all apps, but some of them like Overcast will see that because it's in kind of a time format and make that a clickable link. So if you're listening in Overcast, you can click that and it'll jump right to the 17-minute.
You just hit that button every time, or you have to type it in like the exact number
in the show notes.
Okay.
Now, if I do that, but what the marker would do is it would let me know that we changed subject. So when I'm trying to do the show notes, where normally I listen to the whole thing and I'm taking out ums and I'm taking out stuff, but I was in a really big hurry, I could just jump to the markers and go, oh, this is where we talked about this and this is where
right.
And I could just then put those in the show notes, type them in, and that would make that a whole lot easier. And that's where we mentioned at the beginning of the show, this guy in Nashville was talking about how he edits via transcript. He goes to Temi or whoever, gets his transcripts, and he does it because it's much more visual. And I'm like,
all the ums out of the transcript, right?
Well, that's the thing. It's like it circles them. You still have to go back and
make sure that it's clean.
Yeah, and that's where something like whatever it is, Descript on the Mac is a tool that allows you to go in and do that. And I might have to fire my Mac to play with that. They had a demo at Podcast Movement, and Daniel will tell me maybe the other company. Oh, I closed it. Where's my chat room? What's on my phone? Daniel knows the other one. Starts with an S. That was another similar company that does that kind of thing where you highlight the words in the transcript and it pulls it out of the audio. So,
Dave, did you get the MixPre 3M or the 6M or the 6?
6. The M is for the musician.
Ah.
And
okay,
I'm not sure what it does.
It's cheaper.
It is cheaper.
Yeah.
I didn't see that. I was tempted and I was like,
it doesn't have certain configurations, I think, for you might use for doing
audio.
I don't know.
Okay.
So
Ross, what did you got the 3?
I got the 3. I love it. I mean, it's great. I like I say, I can't tell whether the sound quality is, I think in some ways it's better, in some ways it's not, compared to, I mean, I had a pretty good interface for, sub $500 interface. I had the Audient ID14, still have it. So, but the ability to record within it, when I live stream on Facebook where the audio is so degraded, and then use that line out for something else or to go to another platform or whatever, I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that was like I said,
the recording quality is really good. I mean, it's the same thing as recording in your computer. I mean, because it's post the conversion or whatever, but it's just when you don't want to record in your computer because you're using it for so many other things. And I know it's a lesser footprint audio than video, but still, to know that you got it secure in that recorder and you don't have to worry about it when you're live is comforting.
Totally. Yeah. I think it's a smart way to do audio if you know, especially if you have underpowered PC equipment.
Yeah.
You know,
and that's the thing. It powers from a USB-C to two USB-A connections.
Right.
So like one is the data and one is the power. And I find that the power does suck a little power out of my computer.
Well, what I did is I have it plugged into a brick.
Smart.
So
that's a really good idea, Dave. Because if you have a power shortage or power outage, you have a different problem. But
and right now the brick is plugged into the brick is charging as it's powering the.
Yeah, how big is that brick? Do you know? I'm from a milliamp power wattage. I forget how they. I never get those right. Kilowatt hour or what a milliamp.
5 volts, 1 amp, and then I have another plug here that's
the total battery total battery. So it's like 5,000 or 4,000 or 10,000, something like that.
I don't know. It was
I bet it's 4 or 5. That's pretty standard. You can get as much as 10 or 12. The big ones are 20.
It'll take somebody out if I hit him in the head with it. It's pretty big. So.
Yeah, it's a good thing to have. Those are really, really good things to have. Does it have a meter on it that tells you how charged it is?
Yeah, I've got 2 bars and the third one is blinking because I'm sucking energy out as.
Yeah. No, but that's a super smart idea. I would not have thought to go through a brick. Get a fairly powerful brick and go through that. That's a good idea.
With the H5 and an H6, you know, all those run on USB if you want them to. So that's what I used to do because it's. I don't think I haven't tried the H6 yet, and the H5 wasn't bad, but the original H4 was pretty bad with batteries. I think they fixed that with the H4n, but I just like that because I've never run out of brick.
Right. Yeah, and better than again going into your PC battery because that may be if you're on a laptop that depending on the quality of the battery and how long you've used it, and you know you wouldn't want that thing. Drawing it down and then you lose your PC in the middle of it, right? So having it attached to a brick, kind of dedicated. Man, power bricks right now are super cheap too. I was at Office Depot or Home Depot or Office Max or Home, anyways, one of those stores, and they're clearancing them for you can get a 4,000 or a 5,000. They're like $5. So there's no excuse not to have a bunch of. Say it again, Ross.
Office Depot.
I think it was Office Depot. Yes, thank you.
$5. Like, start the car.
No, it's super cheap, and they had hundreds of them. I mean, it was like they're just getting rid of them. And
that's what I should do is plug it into the brick because I'm plugging it into a USB port connected to my computer, and it seems to slow it down a little bit.
Give it a try.
Even though my computer's plugged in, right. I did buy the power adapter for the Mix Pre. Yeah. But then I don't know whether I can run like a USB-C to USB-C if I'm powering it that way or not. I'm a little confused with it. I tried to do that and like the computer was looking for the sound. So there's so much you can do with this thing. I'm so glad you bought it, Dave. I can't wait till
Daniel says the DBX 286S, the preamp noise is minus 125 dBu. Like we'll pretend like that. We understand what that means. And the Mix Pre is minus 128. So they're about the same. Zoom H6 is minus 120. So we're talking a difference of 3 to 8 dBus. So
that's the amount of heat they put off when they're running.
Might not all be the same. Ray Ortega did a fantastic episode recently about preamps. Yeah, I just remember when I had an H4 that if I turned it up loud enough to make my microphone I was using loud enough, I would actually see noise at the very bottom of the recording. And I was like, oh, that's not good.
Right.
I've never had anything since then even come close to that. So I think sometimes we're worrying over, a level of hiss that like,
right.
We're not going to hear.
And sometimes it's important though, too. We shouldn't minimize that. It's not everything can do that. But I think at this point in the gear we're talking about, it's going to take a very special ear to hear it. Between these products, these are some really good products, guys.
But this is
It has a
This
lot.
is quality. This is really good. These are not Blue Yetis, right?
I don't need to use a cloud lifter with the SM7B, and I only have it up maybe 60%.
Nice.
I mean, the other thing is the headphone port is amazing. The headphone amplifier in this thing. I mean, everything sounds good. Like something on Facebook sounds good listening to it through this thing. It almost deceives me. I'll be editing something and then I'll go and I'll listen without the headphones on or through something else. And I'll be like, that's not nearly as good as it sounded coming back through the mix bridge.
Well, Facebook tends to squash their audio pretty. Yeah. We could have a contest sometime, which is worse, Google audio or Facebook audio. That'd be fun.
Well, I think Facebook was the worst in every.
Yeah, I think Google's pretty good, to be honest. For free, I think it's pretty good. It does some weird ducking. That's the one thing I don't like about it. And they would have the ability to give you the sound on separate channels. Like, how great would that be? That when this thing is done, it actually mixes it back together again, not using the live audio, but the separate channels, and then it eliminates the ducking that goes on. That would be great. I think you would get way better quality. Or I might even, and Google would never do this, but I might even pay for a premium version where it gives me the full fidelity audio as it was recorded on that end. I mean, that could be really cool too. They'll never do that, but that would be cool.
Well, speaking of recording, has anybody used the new Skype thing yet?
Don't. Okay. Not yet. Not yet. Do not.
Okay.
No, not yet. It's not ready. It's not ready. There's all kinds of problems with the new client and some other things. Just give it some time. Microsoft got a little crazy on that thing and rolled it out a little early. So let's not do that. Let's make sure you keep your Skype Classic install. If you're big on Skype, make sure you're keeping that Skype Classic somewhere around. It's going to try and auto update you to the new, to the new Windows 10 version. And it's just everything I'm hearing is it's just junk. So don't do it.
Yeah, I know SP and Steven tried it and they were saying how it was not.
It's just not ready. Not ready for prime time. They'll get it right. They'll get it right. But it's not right now. No. But the crazy thing is Microsoft rolls these things out. And they roll them out too early and they're just awful. And they get all this negative press. And then they spend a whole bunch of time fixing it. And they get it really good. And then they never tell anybody.
Yeah. Like, hey, we fixed it.
And you're like, how about have another launch party? Or maybe not launch it till it's ready. Although they really depend on user feedback to make it better. But you're like, Microsoft, you got such great products in the end. But nobody knows about them because they were so bad when they came out. Yeah, it's awful.
Icky.
That's the pain of being a Microsoft enthusiast, and it's.
Before I jump off, I'll just throw one more question out there. Are they ever going to bring live video to LinkedIn? That would be a fun one, wouldn't it?
Oh,
careers going left and right down the tube.
I don't know, Ross. Let's not ruin LinkedIn.
Hey, I'm walking down the street.
Look at LinkedIn is barely holding on to its professional status right now. There are so many people who just want to post their personal stuff in there, but they know they're going to get a tongue lashing if they do. It's kept it
being live and like walking into your boss's office and that person isn't like wanting to see you at that moment or what
I hope not. I hope they leave that out of LinkedIn. I have posted, I do have really good feedback when I post my live videos, not live, when I post my recorded videos, YouTube or on archive.org or I was doing Vimeo for a while. They got really weird on their pricing plans. And so I dropped them, but I get really good feedback. My podcasts kind of lend themselves towards LinkedIn. So both Gallup and Home Gadget Geeks and even Cyber Frontiers. So that works really well. And when I post the videos out there, I get really good engagement. So that part works.
People actually watch them on LinkedIn.
They do. Yeah. And if they're good quality stuff, I think that you get good quality feedback. I don't want LinkedIn to turn into Facebook with live stuff popping up all over. I love don't get me wrong. I love it. Let's just leave it on Facebook. Like that's where it belongs.
Well, thanks a lot, guys. Congrats on the purchase, Dave.
Thank you, sir.
Take care.
Good seeing you, Ross. Take care.
But I hope there's a person at this meeting. She was maybe 23, and we were talking about texting and something about somebody giving somebody a call, and she actually said, "Oh, like somebody would call." Like, and I hope she's there because I want to ask her like why do you like not in a like you're wrong. I just want to know like when did calling become like so bad and why?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I guess I assume the answer is going to be, well, it's so much easier to text. And I'm like, yeah, but it's not if you want to have a long conversation. It's not.
Yeah. What's incredible, we've gotten so far away from communicating verbally and in person. When you do it, it's incredibly powerful. And I at work, whenever there's a hint of anything that's got conflict in it, I'm like, I'll be right over. And I just walk over. It doesn't make sense to try and do this. Let's not do this via IM. Let's not do this on email. Right. Don't text me. I'm just going to come over and talk to you. And in 2 minutes, we solve the problem. And it doesn't get all crazy and out of control and caps. And right. I've got somebody at work who sends me emails, and at the end of every subject is exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, why so many? And I've even asked this person several times, why do you put so many? Yeah. And it's like, well, I wanted you to pay attention. I'm like, I pay attention whether they're there or not. Like, don't get frantic on me.
Hey, and just so you know, I think Emily's coming in.
Oh, good.
And I'm switching to my horrible camera.
Oh, yeah. You all of a sudden we got a totally different view of you.
Because I am checking out in 5 minutes, so I'm starting to pack things up.
Oh, yeah. Well, we can end up here if we need to. But
that's the cool thing that you started this, because I might actually jump out here.
Oh, cool. That's true. That's true. I can, once you jump off, we can say all kinds of bad things about you. Let's do a Dave Jackson roast without Dave Jackson.
That's it. But she wanted to ask about SSL, and I was like, jump in.
Yeah, Emily, jump in. Love that.
Hi.
Hey, Emily.
Hi.
The value of the rent just went up. Thanks for jumping in.
Oh, well, thank you. So I was looking on Squarespace, of all places, because I have my business website on Squarespace, and I was making sure that I had the SSL certificate. I was like, oh my God, I think I need this for my website.
You do?
Yeah. And I noticed this really interesting thing when I looked it up. From Squarespace, I think their RSS feeds cannot get that SSL certificate. They always use HTTP links instead of HTTPS, even when the secure setting is enabled. This helps keep your feed visible to feed readers and other services. So I thought that was really interesting, just because people host their podcasts on Squarespace.
They do. Yeah. And I think that's actually, I think that's a good way of saying, because it's for them to upgrade all of their feeds to secure. It's a lot of work. Like, even Google is struggling with this. Like, Blogger is not, all the Blogger sites right now are not SSL. They're all HTTP. And we host with them at work on one of them, and they have you go into their settings and it says, it's coming. Don't worry, it's coming. Even though on their search side, they're saying, hey, we're going to start dinging you if you don't have a secure site. Their own sites, Blogger is owned by Google. Their own sites aren't secured yet, right? Their own blog sites. And I think with these host providers, Libsyn, Blueberry, they've all done the work that's required to get the feeds. And I think most apps now are able to read those just fine. So I think Squarespace is going to need to get their act together and start securing those feeds. I don't see how they can't do that.
It's interesting because I'm not sure when or if it's already happened, but to even submit your feed to Podcast Connect, it has to be HTTPS.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
The other thing that's fun is that's been down all week.
Yeah, I heard a rumor that it's coming back Tuesday.
But it's like, aren't you like $1 trillion company? Like, I love you, Apple, but what's the deal? Yeah. Because I felt bad because I have all these, in some cases I have pre-written stuff. So it'd be like, oh, here's your RSS feed. You can go to blah, blah, blah and submit your show. And then I have to now go in and go as soon as it's available.
As soon as it's back up. It was probably hosted on an old Pentium 4 box under somebody's desk, and they kicked out the cord and didn't realize it. It's been down all week. Nobody knows where that thing is hosted at. Emily, they're gonna need to get that fixed.
Yeah, I have it on my website, regular websites with Squarespace. Like it already had the SSL certificate. That was fine.
Are you hosting audio on Squarespace?
No.
Okay.
No, just my website, just my business.
So you don't need to worry about it.
No.
And you're taking advantage of Squarespace's marketplace, right? Their ability to sell things, right? Which is pretty good, you think?
Yeah. I don't know what they do with their SEO, but I get a lot of just cold traffic to my website.
$24 a month for that? Is that what you're paying?
I think it's 16 or 18. Like I got it way early for my first podcast, so I still had the plan going. Yeah. You know what's funny? My second referrer is Dave's podcast resources page.
There you go.
Wow.
Yeah. He put me on there and I was like, oh, I didn't even realize I was on there. That's cool.
Yes. Well, here you go.
Thank you.
Yeah, good to know. It's Emily, that my sister came to me and said, hey, I want to set up a store. And I think Squarespace, if you're going to sell stuff, I think Squarespace is pretty good at that. That's one of those things, you can go in there, set it up, get it going. I mean, there's other sites that do that for you. You can go through a Hayneedle or some of those other ones. But I think Squarespace, I don't know, Emily, you're using it. Is it working? It sells things for you?
I don't actually put any merchandise up on it. So it's not like I don't think. I'm trying to think if I have anything.
So you're not using their store. That's probably why you're paying less.
No. Okay. Yeah, I'm not using their store. I'm using it for my blog and my business pages and affiliate sales. That's about it.
Yeah. Well, it's they do have the ability to set up a store for you.
Yeah. And, Dave raised his hand.
Oh, go ahead, Dave. You got to go.
I have to leave. So
okay. We're hijacking your show, Dave. Drive safe, and we expect to see a halfway video from you when you're halfway back home. Just make sure you're safe. We can't let the Dave Jackson get hijacked.
And avoid all the deers.
See you, Dave. See you, Dave. Emily, how are you handling your book purchases and all that stuff? That's all through somebody else, right? They're setting that up for you.
Yeah, that's all through my publisher, but it's also through Amazon. They do it themselves. So when you self-publish, a lot of that stuff is done on Amazon's side. The cool thing is I found out there are stats. So there are other stats for me to check now.
There's book stats for you, right?
I know. And the funny thing is, and I've told Dave this before, is with books, as opposed to a podcast, you're pushing for those reviews. The reviews actually do help you in Amazon.
They do matter on Amazon.
So now it's weird to be like, my publisher's like, you have to push for reviews when the book goes out. I'm like, oh, I feel so icky.
No, don't just get us in. Are we gonna? I think would I have bought a physical copy? If I bought something, it would have been physical, right? Is it available on Kindle?
Yeah, there's a Kindle version.
I'm pretty sure I bought a physical copy, so that'll show up October 5th. Is that 15th?
October 15th? Okay.
Yeah. You have any idea on pre-sales? Are you comfortable talking? Do you get those kinds of numbers?
That they won't show me. They won't show me the actual stats of pre-sale until the books are shipped, and then they give you the stats for that. Okay. Yeah.
Well, on that first day, and you'll do this anyways, but make sure you're combing through the various book categories, because you're going to rocket to number one on a bunch of them, and screenshot that, because it's never going to happen again.
That's my publishing company actually did that, because the first day that it was up and I put out the email and told people, it got to number one on Amazon in the fun facts and trivia section.
Nice.
So I beat the Guinness World Records.
For a day or two.
Yeah. I was like, oh my gosh. So I have those screenshots.
No, that's good. Yeah, hold on to those, because that's really cool to be, we at Gallup, when we release our books, they hit Amazon, and of course our marketing engines are just cranking, and so they go to number one pretty fast, and then they stay up there for a little bit, but it not, and then it kind of wanes and another book kind of comes in. I'm sure on the 15th, you'll also, once it ships, there'll be some renewed marketing around that as well, right?
It's
actually available.
Let's see if I can find it. Yeah. This is my marketing packet that my publisher sent me. Of just like, here's what you want to do for video. Here's what you want to do for Twitter. Here's what you want to do for Facebook. Meanwhile, I'm taking notes. I'm like, I could do this for my podcast. This
Totally.
is, like, seriously, this is great.
Is that stuff copyrighted? Could we? Maybe we should do a show around it.
Well, we're in the post show, so yeah. I'll send
Nobody watches the post show.
I'll send it to you, Jim. It's okay. I'll send it.
Oh, I'm sure was there anything in there in their marketing plan that was new to you? Like, in other words, you were like, oh, I didn't know I should be doing something like this.
A lot of stuff with keywords, especially, well, with Amazon Books, you get a certain number of keywords to rank for. Okay. So they're using those keywords in a lot of my marketing material. It's like war, science, history, like the keywords are just like, maybe I talk about wars. I don't actually talk about wars, but they're in the books. But apparently that's a good word to rank for.
Ah, yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, and there's just like, here's how you use hashtags in Twitter. You weave them into your actual tweets, whereas in Instagram you put them at the end, or so stuff like that.
Yeah, you almost need an encyclopedia guide for social media now of where to go and how to do, and you almost spend more time creating them social for it than you do actually creating the content.
Yeah, and that's even funnier was when I was first working on learning marketing for a business. I went in and I had to find out exactly, all right, here's what the Facebook algorithm does. Here's how you can work it in your favor. This is what Facebook likes. This is what Facebook doesn't like. Facebook hates links thrown in. Facebook loves when you do live videos. It loves when you uses your tools, like stuff like that, finding all that out. And I'm like, this has nothing to do with my business, but you need to learn that for marketing of anything.
I know. It was really nice at work. I got a marketing guy who's really savvy now, and he's been pushing and doing some of the work I just didn't have time to do. He has been pushing for some of those things, and it's been really, really helpful and really, really nice. It's just nice to have another person. I've been doing this alone for a long time, and all of a sudden I've got some, and it's not just him. I've got a marketing team behind it now who's like, okay, I need you to do this. And I'm like, yes, like someone's telling me what to do. This is awesome.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, it's like my publishing company is doing their own marketing for it, but they're like, you have to do this because you want that relationship with people. They want it to come from you, from your Instagram, from your Twitter. We're not going to tell you that you need to do this, but we're sending you this. This will make the biggest impact.
Yeah. Have they set some, you don't have to say what they are, but did they set some goals for you? In other words, like, we want to see this many units sold?
Not units sold. They're not setting that. That's actually the way my publishing company works is I didn't get an advance, but I get more of a commission.
I like that.
It's really good. But what they do want, and this is more for ranking of the book itself, because then they make more money and then Amazon makes more money, then Amazon promotes it, is like, we want you to get 25 reviews that first week. Like, that's our goal. And then we're going to push up the goal. So
we need to get, as a community, we need to get behind you day one of the launch, right? That's the best to help you the most. Day of launch, if we're out there writing reviews for you, that's the best possible. Do you have a mechanism in which you're going to notify people that, hey, just a reminder? Like, for me, it would be awesome to have a reminder that day that says, hey, just a reminder, go review my book. Because I would agree to that. I would be like, would you remind me? Do you have a reminder mechanism in place?
I'll figure out a way. I could just text you, Jim. That's fine.
No, I know. I'm just trying. Like, it's not just for me, Emily. I'm thinking about people who are listening.
I know. No, it'll be on all the social media and in my show. And I have an email newsletter just for the book. And
So with that email newsletter, will you remind people, hey, the book is out? Okay, so that'd probably be the right answer. Is sign up for my email newsletter for just the book. Where do I go to do that?
That's the storybehindbook.com.
Okay, it's right off that site.
Yeah, it's right on there.
Storybehindbook.com. Wow, I found it pretty quick. So
yeah, the funny thing is, people have said they've had to search. If they just go to Amazon and put it in, they're like, there's so many Story Behind books. Like, Yeah. So they have to search either my last name or it's
Oh.
funny with Amazon, with those keywords that I was talking about, they like when people search for your book and they would put in the story behind history, wars. If they use those keywords, it also helps with your ranking. So it's a cool little Amazon thing. And this wasn't even from my publishing company. This is actually from the podcast I help with, the book marketing show, which helps out a lot. So
Yeah. What do you think if you one or two things that you've kind of learned through this whole book writing experience that you would apply to podcasting? What do you think those would be that you didn't know before?
Well, I think one of the coolest things I did was when I would write my scripts, even if I was recording, I would stop the recording to fix a typo or to fix some weird thing, even though I was just recording. This is before the book. And I was like, oh, but it's there. It'll bother me. And that helped me so much when I went back and I had to reuse those episodes for chapters. I was like, oh my God, I already fixed this. Like, thank you, past Emily. Thank you, anal retentive Emily, about fixing that. So that helped out a lot. And the other thing was I kept it in my voice, really. I mean, like I write how I talk. I use crutch words. They're not necessarily like and but when I write, I use however a lot. I noticed that when I listen back at faster speeds. I'm like, oh, Emily, stop saying however and despite. And, you know, I think I sound smarter doing that, but I should just get right to the point and say it.
Yeah. Yeah. Were you able to take a lot of your show notes and just basically pull them over and edit and then you're done?
I did that, but with all of them, I also added extras to it. So it wasn't like people who've listened are just reading the same things they already listened to. And at the end of every chapter, I did a TLDR. So it was 3 new facts that facts from the thing that, you know, if they didn't want to read the whole, they're not that long. They're like my episodes. They're really short to read, but in case they were too long, it's 3 facts from it. And then another did you know, which is always something outside of the episode itself. It's something related or is something just a little extra that necessarily didn't fit into the story of it. So that was cool to do.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. Is there any talk of a second book after this one?
Yeah, they wanted to see how well it did. They're like, we really love this idea. We'd love to start a series of just like 50 more things. And I'm just like, and this was when we first started talking. They're like, we could see this being a series and every year thing. And that would be interesting because at the very end, I'm like, never again. I'm never doing this again. But now I'm writing my show notes to read as if another book were coming out because I know it'll be easier on myself. Randy asked what book marketing podcast do I do? I work on the show notes for the book marketing show. Simple. It's Kindlepreneur Dave Chesson who does it. And he's awesome in the self-publishing space. I don't do it. I'm not the host.
But how great is that? Now you're thinking you're already, you know, your podcasts are leading then to book content, which will be gathered up into a book and published on a regular basis. If you can create a following and an audience, there's an endless amount of stories to tell.
Yeah. Also, sometimes I get like just mind blank because I'll be like, oh, I wonder what the story behind this is. And it'll be like, oh, white guy invents it, makes money. Like boring.
Yeah. You know, here's some ideas for you. So, well, this is, and maybe when you said white guy, Westinghouse, the guy behind the Westinghouse company, they did a lot of things with the railroads in the, you know, at the middle of 2 centuries ago, 1800s. And there's a lot of it, like there's a lot of inventions that were made just for the railroads that made those safer and would work. So I think there's a lot of things, but that is white guy who invented something and got rich. You know, but there's a lot of things like that.
The reason I say white guy is because a lot of the time it won't be a white person who invented it, but it'll be a white guy who patents it. Yeah. Like, and that came out in the story behind potato chips where the guy who originally invented it couldn't get a patent on it because he was from somewhere in South America. I'm not sure where, but yeah, he couldn't get a patent on it because he wasn't white.
Wasn't U.S. Oh, was it race or was it nationality?
Oh, probably nationality.
Probably nationality.
Yeah.
Or both. But no, I think there's just when you think, I heard Mike Rowe do his, because Mike's in your genre,
Yeah.
right? His same kind of thing. And he did one on Bob Ross. And I didn't, he did his story on Bob Ross, and I didn't realize Bob Ross was an Air Force sergeant major and was yelling at people all the time. And then when he got out of the Air Force, he's like, I'm never going to yell at anybody again. And so he starts a show, and his show was a ripoff of somebody else's show.
Yeah.
And there was a big controversy, right? Have you done Story Behind Bob Ross?
No,
Okay.
I only did one person really, and that was Betty White, and it ended up being two episodes. It was way in the beginning, and then I realized I never want to do another person. I can't do people. There's too much information.
Sure,
There's way too much. Yeah.
Have you done like history stuff like Louisiana Purchase or Mount Rushmore?
No, I did Mount Rushmore, but I don't do actual. Well, I did one historical thing. That was the stand in the schoolhouse door. And that was part of the Forrest Gump series. But those are also hard too, because that's a whole event. So there are lots of different things that lead to it. So it's so much easier just to focus on a thing where it's like, okay, there's a basic timeline. Maybe there are tiny little offshoots of it.
Right. And you rely on your Facebook group, right? That's kind of to get some, I shouldn't say rely, but you get some of your stories from your Facebook group.
Some of them, it's funny because people will mention something like, I really like this. I have one listener who's just like, please do D&D. And I'm like, that's huge. Like that is a huge thing. I'd love to do it, but it's also huge.
But how did your series, you did Forrest Gump, which was a series, right?
Yeah.
And have you done other large works like, well, you did, We Didn't Start the Fire.
Yeah, that was
right,
fun.
which was a lot. And then you did
I did a Clue
Beatles
series.
Did you do a Clue? Okay. Did you do something on the Beatles? No?
No.
Maybe I'm making that up.
Well, the Beatles I did Imagine as part of the Forrest Gump.
Okay.
Songs are fun. Songs are actually like my highest downloaded ones. Like I did the story behind Bohemian Rhapsody.
Which is a movie coming out here.
Okay, so I put out that episode and all of a sudden the movie trailer came out. I was like, oh, I'm a marketing genius.
That's so great.
So awesome.
So lucky. So did you plan it or was that just luck? Okay.
I had no idea that the trailer was going to come out
so
like
great.
that same week. It was fun.
You timed it. You timed it just right. Well, I would think you could get like some of those deeper series you could do more complex historical pieces or more complex concepts by breaking them down like you did for Forrest Gump or Clue or
the one this week was interesting because I did s'mores, and the story behind the s'more itself is actually like woman writes a recipe in a Girl Scout book and it becomes famous. But I did I usually have 3 sections of each podcast. I'm just like, here's the ancient invention of it. Here's the actual invention of it. Here's the pop culture side of it. Those are kind of the 3 blocks of my show. But this week I did s'mores. So I did the story behind the graham cracker, the story behind the marshmallow, the story behind Hershey's chocolate, because I niched it down a little bit more. And that was a lot of fun.
No, have you done Alamo? Like, remember the Alamo, the story behind the phrase, remember the Alamo? Have you ever done? That's historical, but there you go. There's another.
I went to the Alamo. It's kind of like, oh, all right.
But there's interesting, like the way Texas.
The history is cool. Yeah.
The history of Texas is the Alamo.
Yeah.
And so you put those two together and why it was a republic at one point in time and some of those other pieces, right?
Yeah. They also hate when you go to the Alamo, if you ask them where the basement is, if anyone's seen Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and there's the whole line of his bikes in the basement. The tour guide goes, "There's no basement in the Alamo." And it's like just always stuck in my head.
That's great. That's great. Well, good luck on that as you go. Thanks for jumping in here. I think we're probably way over our time. No. It's good. Good sitting. Dave is on his way out, and good. Always good to chat with you. We got to get you back on Home Gadget Geeks. You and I have talked about trying to do that again and figuring out how to get you back on. Maybe just to come on in the current format and just have you talk.
I have tech stuff in the book that I haven't done episodes on. If you want to talk about them.
Ooh, let's. But I'd almost rather do it from a promotion standpoint. So tell you what, I'll behind the scenes, I'll get with you. We'll schedule a date maybe in October around your book launch and talk about maybe some of the tech. Like, no, I'm talking, I'm podcasting.
Yeah.
That's so awesome. No, I'll send you a note and we'll maybe around your book launch, because I'm scheduling October right now, and we can highlight and just talk about some of the because I'll have the book by then, and we can maybe talk about some of those tech themes that are in there and promote your book. How's
Do you
that sound?
maybe want to be on the back cover, Jim?
What do you mean be on the back cover?
I have
That's
to.
scary.
I know. I actually have to send out samples of my book to a few people to get quotes from them
I'll
about it.
I'll write you a quote.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, that sounds good. So no, send that to me for sure. Okay, Emily, thanks a ton.
Yeah,
If you're listening live, thanks. Good to see you. We'll get you booked for a Home Gadget Geeks.
All right.
All right, we'll see you.
Bye.
Bye.